Third time's the charm for Boeing's highly anticipated Starliner launch. Is Boeing catching up to SpaceX? We'll talk about it today, coming up on Business Matters. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm Don Ma. Okay, S&P 500 and NASDAQ indexes closed at record highs today and was powered mainly by technology stocks. And speaking of which, Nvidia overtook Apple as the new number 2 here. So shares of Nvidia rallied 5% to record highs. The AI chipmaker stock market valuation hitting the $3 trillion mark and dethroning Apple to become the world's second most valuable company. And as I said in the beginning, third time's the charm for Boeing's highly anticipated launch. The crewed spacecraft successfully launched from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station this morning. Here's more on the milestone.
An incredible launch Wednesday morning for the Boeing team that has been a decade in the making. The Starliner taking off for its maiden crew voyage with 2 astronauts on board.
Today's launch was definitely worth waiting for.
Veteran NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams' journey aboard the reusable Starliner capsule to the International Space Station will take just over 24 hours. The mission, known as Crew Flight Test, has been scrubbed twice before, most recently on Saturday, due to a computer issue. The flight is historic in several ways. Williams is the first woman to fly aboard this type of mission.
The 6 human-rated spacecraft. And next year, we should have our 7th human-rated spacecraft.
On board are supplies to make repairs to the space station, and astronauts will be testing the Starliner's capabilities. Wednesday's success begins the final major milestone Boeing needs to be deemed ready for routine operations for NASA. In approximately 8 days, the astronauts will use the same capsule to return to Earth.
We're going to wait till the conditions are right and we've accomplished the test objectives before we do that.
And one of the biggest questions here is whether Boeing is shaping up to be a major competitor to SpaceX. I spoke to an expert in this field about this, Brandon Weichert. Here he is. Brandon, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a while since we last spoke, but it seems like third time's the charm for Boeing. A milestone, you say, for today's launch?
Well, yeah, certainly for Boeing, it's a milestone. Elon Musk has been doing this for quite a while. I think the problem with Boeing is they're too big for their own good. They're sort of an old world model in a very new world. They're not dynamic enough. And I think we saw that. It's taken them several attempts to get this Boeing Starliner going. Again, I'm glad that they got it going because we need competition. But right now, SpaceX remains, in my opinion, the most innovative space company in the world.
How much ahead of Boeing is SpaceX?
I would say they're several years ahead of SpaceX because they've actually been doing these reusable launches. And that's one of the key features Boeing was trying to sell potential clients on is, hey, we're developing a reusable system. SpaceX is already ahead of the game. So it's definitely going to be competitive now, though, because I think Boeing will learn from this experience and they'll keep adapting. But in terms of being ahead, SpaceX is ahead because they're actually doing these demonstrations, going into space physically multiple times a year, whereas Boeing is really kind of just getting going.
Any chance, any progress that Boeing is closing that gap with SpaceX?
Well, they are starting to close the gap, if only because finally they're making this system work in the real world. That has a lot of that carries a lot of weight in terms of learning. And so, yes, I think that they are starting to close the gap, and they certainly have more resources and deeper pockets to kind of play around with technology innovation than does SpaceX, which is still very much a startup. But ultimately, the fact that SpaceX doesn't have a lot of money to play with makes them become more innovative. And so that innovation leads to cost effectiveness, which actually makes SpaceX in the long run more palatable as a system.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about this Boeing spacecraft that just launched today.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to the sort of the old capsules we used to send up to the moon and the Gemini program used. It's a reusable crew capsule. Basically, it's got parachutes. It comes back to the Earth, lands in the ocean with those parachutes, and it's picked up. That's sort of, the old way of doing that. That's how the Soyuz program, the Russian program, has done it since the 1960s. And so we're sort of going back to the way things were before the space shuttle era of the 1980s. And then there's also the fact that which is really cool about the Boeing Starliner is that it's heavily automated. So basically, it's in that way more cost effective than previous spacecraft because it doesn't require the same level of training by as many crew members as previous space missions required because the automation is there. You can have a handful of people and only a couple of them really need to know the intricacies of the system, and you can have a couple more people on board who maybe aren't as well versed. So that's a really big bonus.
All right, just one final thing real quick. How's the U.S. Industry here compared to other countries?
Well, private sector is still light years beyond other countries, but the issue when you're looking at a competitor like China is how do they fuse civilian functions with military-civil fusion. And in my opinion, China still is leading the world because they can bring their government ambitions of world domination through space power with their private sector, or their so-called private sector, to kind of give a comprehensive threat to the United States, whereas in the United States, you've still got these companies competing with each other, doing their own thing, and then you've got the government kind of trying to do its own thing as well. We need to get everybody on the same page in order to stay ahead of the Chinese.
All right, Brennan, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you later.
And here in New York City, a plan to charge motorists to enter Manhattan's business district is on hold now, indefinitely. Today, Governor Kathy Hochul pumped the brakes on the plan known as congestion pricing, and it was just weeks before it was actually set to go into effect. Here's the governor.
So after careful consideration, I have come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion pricing system risks too many unintended consequences for New Yorkers at this time. For that reason, I have directed the MTA to indefinitely pause the program. Now, I want to be clear. My team worked into the final hours to find a way to implement this because the goals of congestion pricing in terms of reducing traffic and pollution are important. But hard-working New Yorkers are getting hammered on costs, and they and the economic vitality of our city must be protected.
Now, New York City Mayor Eric Adams endorsed Hochul's move. Adams, who had not been a strong proponent of congestion pricing, also cited economic concerns. So the plan would have been the first of its kind, actually, in the nation. Officials plan to earmark revenue for transportation and maintenance upgrades. In other news, soon there's going to be a new stock exchange, and that's going to be in Texas, backed by asset manager BlackRock and hedge fund Citadel. They're trying to attract companies that's looking for relief from increasing compliance costs at the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. Here's NTD's John Marshall with the details.
TXSE Group, backed by BlackRock and Citadel Securities, plans to launch an entirely electronic Texas stock exchange based in Dallas, the company said on Wednesday. The exchange has raised about $120 million for their plans to file registration documents with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The company said it's planning to start operating as a national securities exchange later this year. On social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, Michael Dell, the chairman and CEO of Dell Technologies, says, "We want details." And under that, Elon Musk commented, "Sounds promising." The Texas Stock Exchange aims to attract those dissatisfied with increasing compliance costs at the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. Also, the move comes as the NASDAQ implements newer rules, including setting targets for board diversity. The founder and CEO of TXSE Group, James Lee, said that changes in the equities trading markets are driving more volume to exchanges and more choices for issuers and sponsors, adding that TXSE will ultimately create more competition around quote activity, liquidity, and transparency, resulting in more consistent and reliable markets that benefit investors, global issuers, and liquidity providers alike. Though carving a space could prove to be difficult for a new exchange in the lucrative U.S. listings market, where the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ have dominated in a virtual duopoly since the 2000s. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Disney is set to invest up to $17 billion into its Florida resort, and this is months after ending a legal fight with the state of Florida. So a panel of supervisors appointed by Governor DeSantis today gave the initial approval of the deal. Under the terms, Disney would be able to build a fifth major theme park and add hotel rooms and retail and restaurant space. In exchange, Disney will donate 100 acres of property for infrastructure plans and invest in affordable housing. And it's going to ensure that at least half of construction projects go to Florida-based companies. This could be a sign that actually nearly 2 years of feud between the state and the company, that feud is cooling. A legal battle was sparked over Disney speaking out over Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay bill, and the two sides reached a settlement in March. And a final vote on the development deal will take place next Wednesday. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin wants to detach his state from California's electric vehicle mandates. And those are mandates that aim to have all cars sold to be electric by model year 2035. Here's the story.
We are ending once and for all the California electric vehicle mandate in Virginia.
Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin is removing Virginia from California's electric vehicle mandates, saying bureaucrats in California shouldn't be deciding for Virginians which cars they can drive.
Unleashing the power of the consumer to, in fact, drive what inventory is carried here and how they're serviced is what free enterprise is all about.
A few years back, Virginia's Democrat-controlled General Assembly voted to adopt California's electric vehicle mandates, a key one forcing all cars sold in model year 2035 to be electric vehicles.
A lot of folks would like to see California ease back a little bit, at least do what the federal government did, which is to provide a little breathing room, maybe a little bit slower EV growth.
Car expert Paul Eisenstein says manufacturers may have a tough time hitting California's mandates that influence the entire country.
The Constitution says that one state cannot write the rules for the other 49. Because the California Air Research Board is in the position it's in, and Donald Trump tried to remove that position where they would call the shots for the entire country.
Car expert Lauren Fix says car manufacturers may make all their cars fit California's standards. The federal government let California set its own emission standards in the 1960s because of its air quality challenges.
So if you live in Kansas and you don't follow the California rules, you'll still be purchasing a car with the California emissions. So where one state can then make the rules for the others.
Fix believes Virginia officially detaching itself from California's mandates will keep vehicle costs lower, though it's uncertain whether Virginia will actually exit the mandate.
I'd be surprised if the order announced by Governor Glenn Youngkin would go unchallenged. The legislature in Virginia is still controlled by the Democrats, and there are a lot of people that do support boosting EV sales.
Car expert Paul Eisenstein says this may be tied up in court for some time. If there are no court challenges, Youngkin's order goes into effect January 1st, 2025.
Meanwhile, more data released today highlighting that the U.S. labor market is cooling. So private sector employers added an estimated 152,000 jobs in May, according to payroll processor ADP. So that is well below economists' expectations. It's also a large pullback from the 188,000 jobs added in April. Now, ADP is saying that the labor market is still solid, but job gains and pay growth are slowing going into the second half of the year. Service providing industries, for example, transportation, healthcare, and hospitality saw the most gains. On the other hand, manufacturing jobs saw the sharpest drop. The ADP report is an independent measure of employment trends and is developed using an aggregate payroll data from its clients. Its tabulations, though, don't always correlate with the closely watched monthly jobs report from the government, which is due out this Friday. Now, bonuses are on the way for hundreds of thousands of Walmart workers. The retail giant said that it's going to pay bonuses to U.S. hourly store workers. And this includes employees at its pharmacy and vision center stores. Now, both full-time and part-time workers will be eligible for the annual bonus program, but a worker has to be with the company for at least 1 year. So the bonus is calculated based on stores achieving certain performance targets, and the move could boost wages for some 700,000 employees. CEO John Furner said the idea came from feedback from store workers, and he added that Walmart is seeing a decrease in store worker turnover. Also happening today, American Express is out. Online marketplace eBay dropping the credit card. So the company is saying that this is because Amex has, quote, unacceptably high fees to process transactions. A spokesperson says eBay will no longer accept American Express globally starting August 17th. And he went on to say that customers are using other payment options now, like, for example, buy now, pay later, which, by the way, eBay offers through Apple Pay, PayPal, and other companies like Klarna and Affirm. American Express released a statement in response to that. It said that in part that the cost to accept Amex cards is comparable actually to what eBay pays for other similar cards on other networks. Now, taking a break, coming up, you could be seeing police-like body cameras at major retailers the next time you go shopping because retail security workers are now wearing those at some stores. Also, in China, people who protested losing their money in a bank fraud incident are being detained, during which they say they were given moldy food. That and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. I have a few rapid-fire headlines for you. American Airlines has offered its flight attendants immediate wage increases of 17% without waiting for a new contract. So contract negotiations have been underway since 2020. And Dollar Tree is considering selling off or spinning off Family Dollar 9 years after acquiring the chain. Analysts say a combination of messy stores, high prices, and too much expansion has plagued Family Dollar. The CEO of Dollar Tree says the two chains' unique needs have led to the possible split. And the U.S. stock market is shrinking. Bank of America analysts said their clients have been large net sellers of U.S. stocks for 5 weeks in a row. And just last week, the bank saw the highest outflow since last July. And crypto is opening up its wallets to back pro-crypto candidates in the 2024 election cycle. So the president of U.S. crypto firm Ripple is, quote, optimistic that a lobby push will make a difference this year's election cycle. The San Francisco-based company helped lead a record fundraising haul. According to Open Secrets, Ripple is the second largest donor to Super PAC Fairshake. The crypto industry has faced heightened scrutiny after bankruptcies at major firms exposed fraud and misconduct. Former President Donald Trump recently announced that he will start accepting donations in cryptocurrency, potentially signaling an effort to appeal to the crypto community. And injustice in China. People who were protesting losing their money in a bank fraud incident are being detained. According to a Reuters report, 3 people who were protesting one of China's biggest bank scandals have been incarcerated since February. Some 600,000 people lost their savings in a $4 billion fraud that involved 4 banks in Henan. Sources say that the trio was part of a group demanding their money back in Zhengzhou when the group was taken to a police station. And according to sources, most of them were released several days after the detention, during which, though, however, they say they were given moldy food and were woken up in the middle of the night to be interrogated. Sources are saying 3 people still are being held by police in Zhengzhou. Now, the next time you go shop, you might want to be camera ready and smile while you're at it, because retail giant TJX, that's the parent company of TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and Home Goods, the company said that it's equipping some store employees with police-like body cameras to tackle shoplifting and keep customers and employees safe. So a TJX spokesperson said any worker who's wearing a camera undergoes thorough training. A National Retail Federation survey found that 35% of U.S. retailers were researching similar programs. Criminologists say that body cameras may actually do little to help stop shoplifting, since thieves already know they're being recorded when they're doing stuff like that. All right. Fast food restaurants are seeing a comeback of meal deals. An expert tells us what's behind the push. Here's more.
It's a battle for the ages. Chains like Wendy's, Burger King, KFC, and McDonald's are fighting to best one another in value menus to convince consumers to spend their hard-earned cash. Wendy's has a $5 menu and occasionally offers breakfast deals for just $3. Burger King is following suit with the return of its $5 Your Way meal, though it's not available just yet. Chicken chain KFC is touting its Taste of KFC deals as a, quote, value menu with real value, starting at $4.99. Meanwhile, the Golden Arches CEO wrote in a spring quarterly report, as consumers are more discriminating with every dollar that they spend, we will continue to earn their visits by delivering leading, reliable, everyday value. But why the sudden push? And can it work to inspire consumers to drive through?
Value is much more top of mind for that American consumer today than it has been in previous years. The American restaurant community has obviously stepped up those value offerings to meet the consumers that are tighter with their purse strings now.
The pressure for affordability comes as consumers balk at higher menu prices while pulling back spending after several years of high inflation.
Both labor costs and food costs for the industry have exponentiated over the past 4 years. So as a result of that, the baseline menu price for a lot of food and beverage items is higher.
All right, and that's all the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate you tuning in every day to watch our show. It really gives us a lot of support when you do. But if you have any feedback for the episode or any suggestions for what we should cover in our next episode, please don't hesitate to let me know. Our email here is business@ntd.com. I do read them, so send it over or leave a comment online. I read those too for every episode. And as I always say before we go at the end of every episode, business matters. Thank you very much, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.